Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the File to Lead podcast, a Christian leaders podcast powered by EBEB Solutions, energy benefits for every business. Go to ebebsolutions.com today and get your free energy audit. Well, friends, I am so excited because over the next couple of weeks, we're going to do 2 episodes a week. There was such an amazing amount of guests over the summer that I wanted to make sure I got them all in before the September release of Wisdom in the Wound. That's right. Maybe you've heard of it. I'm releasing a book this September. Wisdom in the Wound comes out September 23rd of 2025. And I am so excited about that. We're going to do a mini series on the book and what that looks like here on the podcast. Plus, I am going to be interviewed by one of my dear friends, player to be named later. I'm not going to say it now. It's a teaser. He's going to ask me all the hard questions about the book. So in order to make sure we've got space for that, we're going to drop a couple of extra episodes over the next several weeks. Today on the episode, Valorie Burton. She's an acclaimed author, speaker, coach. We explore the transformative journey of resilience. Valorie has written 14 books. We talk about her diverse upbringing. We talk about perspective. So many good things in this episode. And I know you're going to want to make sure you stay all the way to the end for the 3 and 5. 3 practical takeaways in 5 minutes or less. So now, a quick word from our sponsors, and then my conversation with Valorie Burton. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited today to have author, speaker, and coach Valorie Burton with us. Valorie, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the podcast today.
Well, Tony, I'm excited. So thank you for the invitation.
You know, I always love to start kind of from the macro. You have done a lot of things. You've written 13 books. You speak to audiences all over the place. I'm curious, how would you describe the calling that God has placed on your life?
Well, I had prayed about my calling, my purpose, and what I eventually got, which took a couple of years, is inspiring others to live more fulfilling lives, that I do it through writing and speaking. That was very clear to me from the Holy Spirit in July of 1999, way back in the last century. And I started writing the first book within 3 weeks and haven't stopped since. So this next book is number 14.
That's wild.
Yeah. And an opportunity to speak. And then out of that, I began coaching in 2002. And then out of that was thinking, gosh, this really works. Is there some research behind it? So I went back to grad school to study positive psychology and then launched the Coaching and Positive Psychology Institute to train coaches. So that's been like that journey over the last 26 years. Half my life.
You have an amazing educational journey. And so I saw that you were at the Air Force Academy for a year. You have 2 master's programs, degrees. You have been learning your entire life. And I'm always curious about the posture of a learning leader. How do you kind of lean into that still, right? Because you're clearly doing the entrepreneurial side, but also the learning side. Not many leaders I know do both well, but throughout your history, you've seemed to have woven it together beautifully.
Interesting. I've never been asked that in that way or had it pointed out in that way. So when I do a strengths assessment, love of learning is in my top 5. It's just what I naturally do. Like I said, I started coaching and then I was like, this really works. Is there something that proves it works? That's how I discovered positive psychology. So, I really believe my life is a learning laboratory. And as I learn, I teach. And I also believe that, I just have this one perspective. So over the years, as I've coached, what I learned about coaching is it made me a better writer and speaker because I've dealt with so many different people, their opportunities, their challenges, that then the perspective is not just mine. It's all of those people that I've coached over the years. And the same is true with the research. It's like, okay, and that takes it a step beyond people I've necessarily worked directly with or my own experience or even the the teaching that around the issue that might be in the Bible. And what does the research say about it? So for me, it's all these layers that validate what really works in helping us live our best possible lives and tap into our strengths and understand, what happens when we discover our purpose and walk fully in it.
Whenever I talk to a high thought leader like yourself, I'm always curious about how you retain the information, because as I, like 2 master's programs and all the reading, all the writing, what I'd love to get practical here. What kind of process, what tools, what good practices can we steal from you on not only do I want to read the books, but then I want to be able to use them for the benefit. You launched a whole institute off of your learning. How did you put all that together?
I talk in Rules of Resilience about a professor who had a lot of impact on me named Angela Duckworth, and she wrote a book called Grit. And grit is passion and perseverance for things of significance to you. Like it's something that holds meaning to you. So I can tell you, Tony, that if you ask me about what I learned when I was studying computer science and programming at the Air Force Academy, or if you ask me about my geology class at Florida State, I don't remember any of it. Because I don't have a passion in that area. Like grit for things that that don't excite you is very difficult. But when you find the thing you're called to do, when you find the thing you're wired to do, like when I studied positive psychology or anything around coaching, I'm a coaching geek, right? So I'm a sponge. It's not hard for me to remember that stuff. And I think that's true for most of us when we are in the thing that lights us up. Yeah, I can't get enough. And with coaching, it's been 23 years. And you put me in a class with somebody that maybe they're teaching a perspective I haven't heard. And it's like light bulbs are going off and I just want to know more. Now, and that what that means is that I might come up with ways to remember things, but most of those things, I remember them because I'm applying them to what I'm teaching. And the repetition of teaching it also helps me further learn it, because if you're teaching something, people are going to be asking you, or they're going to be pushing back on what you're saying. So I'm not going to put it out there if I haven't really studied it enough to have a good conversation or even a debate about it, because you need to understand your ideas. And I think that also means with my learning style, I'm also flexible. If I learned new information I didn't know before, that does not scare me.
Yeah.
If I discover your perspective wasn't broad enough for that declaration that you made, I'm really okay with saying, I gathered some new information and this is a perspective I hadn't thought of before. So I think that takes the pressure off to have to be absolutely right about everything.
That's a beautiful posture of humility, right? And I think most leaders that survive long term have that posture of humility. I'm curious if you would call yourself, are you familiar with the term third culture kid? So somebody who grows up outside of the U.S. and then comes back to the U.S. And I know that I think your dad was in the Air Force, and so you traveled around a ton, and you were in Frankfurt, Germany, and so do you think that travel early on has a lot to do with the way that you see that kind of changes the picture? And I'll let you answer that first before I go stacking questions. I'm always trying to stop that habit.
I will say that my upbringing in diverse environments definitely has shaped who I am, even my learning. So, I was born in North Florida, in Panama City, at Tyndall Air Force Base, and we lived right on the ocean. Like when we moved to Germany, I was like, where are the dolphins? Because I would sit on my swing set in the backyard on the Air Force Base and watch dolphins jumping around in the Gulf.
Love it.
And fighter jets were flying overhead because it was a fighter jet training base. And so I remember asking, where are the airplanes? It's really quiet. Where are the dolphins? But yes, learning another culture, other languages. We didn't live on base in Germany. We lived on the economy, as they call it. Even though the bus came and picked us up there, but that was really great, because I would come home every day. My parents both worked. So I'd come home every day, and our landlord, Frau Engel, would meet me. And Frau Engel was from Czechoslovakia, and her family had escaped during World War II. And
wow,
she had her garden in the back, so I would go back there, and sometimes we pick strawberries. And she had rabbits, and I didn't know she was growing the rabbits because one day we would have rabbit, and I didn't know I was eating rabbit on the third day of Christmas. They celebrate all 12 days of Christmas.
Sure, yeah.
So we come up for the, and I'm eating. I'm like, this chicken is really good. And I'm like, why don't y'all eat some more? Talking to my parents. And they're just like, we'll tell her later. I loved it. I loved Germany. I loved the German people. I loved that Frankfurt was right in the middle of Western Europe. So you could get, everywhere was like 6 hours, Amsterdam, Paris, London, Zurich. So that was neat. And then we moved to Colorado, which was so different from North Florida or South Carolina, where my parents were born and raised. I definitely grew up having an interest in other cultures and people, always being curious about that. So when we got back, I continued to learn German. I then learned Spanish. So my undergraduate degree is in international relations. I thought I was going to be an international corporate attorney. I'd use my languages. I figured out that wasn't the calling. But yes, definitely, that wouldn't have been my path had I lived overseas as a kid and experienced different cultures and people.
I love that. My sister lives in Germany, and so Germany is she lives in Dresden. It's near and dear to my heart. I love going over there, and it's so grateful to have a place to stay when I go over. My follow-up question to that, though, is that learning that as a muscle. So like, suppose you're sitting across from like a young leader, just a faith-driven entrepreneur who wants to level up but doesn't have that third culture experience. How would you coach them, recommend to them building that muscle of curiosity?
I think that's so, so important. So I don't think if third culture is what I am, I don't think it's just from living overseas. I think it was also from living in a military environment.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Many backgrounds. Mm-hmm. Even when we were in Florida, my friends were so many backgrounds. My friends were multiracial. Maybe they had a parent from Thailand or Vietnam, friends from Puerto Rico, from Philippines, obviously black, white, like everybody's in there together. And then living out West and living in the South. So I think the most important thing you can do is be open to hearing someone else's perspective. I think this is extremely important. And I think it's extremely important at this point in our history.
Yeah.
Because we're more divided than ever. And we want to, unfortunately, often believe the worst about people who don't have the same background or experience. And so I always say, when you feel tempted to judge, when you find your answer to why someone did something is a judgment, and be honest with yourself, right? Because often it is. Replace your judgment with curiosity.
That's so good.
I wonder what causes them to feel that way. Like, if it's not just that they are crazy or they don't like stuff that's important to me, what might it be? Like, what if they really did have a different experience than I did? And how might that have shaped them? And how might my experience have shaped me so that it's hard to see their perspective? This changes everything because we begin to give people the benefit of the doubt. And in relationships, that creates a whole lot more resilience and the ability to communicate and collaborate. So if you want to lead, you're not likely going to lead people who are all like you. I would say go to some places that are not where you go to a different part of town.
Yeah.
Try going to a different place of worship. Talk to people who are different generations without judging, that, they all do X, right? And turn on some different news. Stop listening to your favorite newscaster. And even if listening to someone else raises your blood pressure, just pray through it. Just take
right.
And that's how you stretch and grow that muscle. right? And you may not agree with everything, but if you listen long enough, you might hear somebody say something that lets you go, I had not thought of that. Now, maybe I don't think it justifies the different opinion, but I do now see how they might have a different opinion. I think that's really powerful, and it's important. It's important because it gives humanity to everyone.
I love that. That's so good. I have noticed in your writing, you've written a lot about success. You've written a lot about happiness, being brave enough in this latest book, Resilience. I'm always curious, somebody who's cranking out as much content as you are, because that's a lot of books. How do you discern God's voice saying, okay, Valorie, this is the book I want you to write next?
So with rules of resilience, I've been speaking on this topic since about 2008, which was around the time I finished the program in applied positive psychology at the University of Pennsylvania. And I thought it was temporary because we were headed into a, recession and all of that. And then after that was over, that still was the top topic. And then we hit a pandemic. And now there's just so much going on, so much upheaval in the world. And people are dealing with anxiety and depression, but also the biggest reason I wrote this because I write about success. I'm always wondering, what do successful people do differently? Mm-hmm. That's the essence of my work. And in order to be successful, you must have the skill of resilience, because there's no way that you're going to achieve any large vision by going straight from A to Z. We always say that in our heads, those of us who are big optimists have big vision, but we also kind of are overly optimistic about how long it takes, how many resources. So inevitably you hit roadblocks, disappointments, challenges, difficulties, and resilience enables you to navigate those. So I knew for this book that I felt like God had been talking to me on this subject for a very long time and exposing me to a lot of experiences as well as research and information. All of the other books, they've just come. They all fit within my mission. I've had times where I just wrote one of my weekly newsletters and the publisher was like, this would be a great book. And I'm like, really? And then I've had other times where I was speaking at an event, like let go of the guilt. And I just happened to mention guilt. It wasn't even a topic I normally talk about. I was asked to speak to working parents at this huge conference. And I talked about my own guilt. But it was mostly women. And they all collectively were like, yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's not just me. Because I thought I shouldn't even mention the guilt because that's just my issue. And I kept bringing it up. And I realized women in particular are struggling with this. So often it's God showing me something, and then it's show this to others. So I just I flow with it. And yeah.
Practically, are you like, I got to write 1,000 words a day? Are you doing 5,000 a week? I love kind of the weeds part of creation. How do you stay disciplined in the writing seasons?
I always say, do the math, which is what you just did. Do the math. Okay. If I'm writing 60,000 words, what do I need to write? If you did 1,000 words a day, you need 60 writing days to draft your book.
Yeah.
Like that feels doable. So I have typically aimed for about 1,500 words a day when I'm writing, and I'm a recovering procrastinator. So
that's awesome.
People don't believe me. After 14 books, they're like, you don't procrastinate. Yes, I
14 books. 2 master's degrees. You launched your own academy, like, you know what I mean? I mean, like, institute, like there's some evidence to suggest that you're quite the productive procrastinator.
I'm a productive procrastinator, but so I'm the kind of person, if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. I may take a long time before I say I'm going to do it. Once I say it's going to happen, it will happen. So once I tell people or enter an agreement, like I have to work it out. So I procrastinate until the point that I know that if you don't get started now,
you're going to be in trouble.
You're going to be in big trouble. And so when that point happens, but I have had occasion where I was able to get very focused and just get it done. But even sometimes in those, I've been doing a lot of other things, but I find my time. It might mean waking up at 4:30 and I write between 5 and 8. And then there's the rest of my day. Once I had kids, that became a lot more challenging. And so I've had to embrace smaller blocks of time. A lot of times we tell ourselves we need something that we cannot have. Oh, I need 6 months off to write my book. Good luck with that. You might not get your book written until you're retired. But if you say, like, I have a colleague, Deborah Smith Pegues, who's written multiple books.
She's been on the podcast.
Okay. Yeah. She has sold
Love her. She's
millions of copies.
Yeah.
And she's in a membership that I have called the Successful Women's Academy. And I'm so humbled by that because she's so amazing and productive. But her thing is 300 words a day. 300 words a day. So it takes her about a year. But 300 words is, on some days, that's 15 minutes for me. So you figure out what works for you. But even if you take baby steps, eventually you get to the finish line. So I think it's important to have a temperament to experiment, meaning try something out this week, see how it works. And this works whether you're writing a book or you got a new exercise plan or an eating plan or something you're trying to do financially or as a leader. Try it out. Too often we commit to a definite, like it's going to be this. And then when we can't do it, we want to give up. And I say, experiment. Say, I will try this. And then after you've tried it, you go, what worked about that? What didn't work? What could I tweak? Now let me try again. So you experiment until you find what works. And if something's not working, I think it's so important to be able to say, that's not working. What else could I try? As opposed to, it's not going to work, period.
That's so good. And it's a great segue into this idea of the rules of resilience. When you write something like this, where they're like, hey, these are the rules of resilience, 10 ways to help people get better, that kind of idea. How do you begin to form those thoughts? Like what gets included, what doesn't? How do you know what's a fit? And like, how do you test these out to make sure that they're tried and true before you put them down on paper?
Well, first of all, like I said, me speaking on this topic has been happening since 2008.
Sure.
As I was finishing up grad school. And I had the honor of, some professors who are extraordinarily respected in resilience. Dr. Karen Reivich, who I was able to study under, Dr. Marty Seligman, obviously the founder of positive psychology. So that was a start that let me say, what are the kinds of things that need to be present? For example, thought awareness is the most foundational around resilience. You can have two people with very similar challenges with completely different reactions to those challenges. We tend to think that people go from whatever their stressor is to whatever their reaction is. But what you don't see that often happens in just an instant between those two things is what you say to yourself about the stressor. And so I knew that would be foundational, that a lot of these rules would be around thoughts, attitude. I call them adaptive skills in the book. It's a 3-part framework. If you understand these 3 components that build resilience, your adaptive skills, how you think, your attitude, your faith, your belief system. So in the face of that stressor, what's going on internally as a result of that stressor? And then your protective resources. And we know from research, this is a piece I found fascinating years ago. The idea of a support system being more than, typically we think support system, we're thinking, okay, people that are around you to help you. That's part of it. It is your relationships. You need relationships to be resilient. We typically, we don't conquer challenges by ourselves. But it's also things like your training, your experience, your education, your environment, money that you have saved, right? I mean, if you come upon a stress or a challenge and you have money that can pay to take care of it, bam, resilience is a whole lot easier. If you don't have the resources or access to those resources, it's very hard. So what I was looking for is like, what are the things we know from research, but if we talk to people who are super resilient, or if I even look at my own life, how did those play out? That third part of the framework is what I call preventive measures, which are the choices that you make that lower the likelihood that you are going to deal with a stressor in the first place.
Sure.
Right? Some stressors you have no control over, but there are a whole lot of things that if you look back in your life at a challenge that you had,
Preach.
you're like, well, if I paid attention to that yellow flag that popped up, or you know what, if I had not spent all the money and I had saved a bit, or, you know, if I wasn't trying to show so-and-so how great I was, right, then maybe I would have made some other choices. And this situation wouldn't be there anyway. So that's the third piece, because once you're in the stressor, you can't do anything about it. However, rules of resilience is about looking at how do you prevent stressors that are actually avoidable.
Oh, that's good.
So over time, you're building up how you think, you're paying attention, you're developing that thought awareness. You are building up protective resources. You're like, okay, I need a cushion. I need to build relationships. They should be reciprocal, like all of those things. And then, okay, what choices could I make that a year from now just make my life a bit easier? And some of those choices are going to be hard. Some of those are going to be boundaries you need to set. Maybe you need to move. Maybe there's a career shift. I mean, sometimes those changes are really different. And then sometimes they're really simple, like you keep saying yes to stuff you know you need to say no to, and now you're stressed out because you're overcommitted and you're having to be resilient through being overcommitted. You could actually make some new choices. By next month, your commitment level could be a lot lower and you could be more effective in the things that matter.
I bet you're an excellent coach. I bet that I'm like, coach me. I'm ready. Get it. It's so good. Let me ask you this, because one of the things that that I think about a lot is resiliency generationally, right? And so there's a lot of entrepreneurs who are listening who grew up in tough circumstances, and a lot of their skills around resiliency and grit is directly connected to the struggles that they had growing up, right? You've heard the story a million times, right? They started hustling at an early age and never stopped, and then launched this business, and now they've done really well for themselves, and now they have this next generation, but you know, who they're raising, right? You've got. You had a child in 2015, kind of later in life. Alex, I think his name is, right? And so
11.
Yeah, he's 11. You're in it. You're in the thick of it. So I have a 13 and almost 15-year-old and then a 19-year-old. So we're in the thick of it too. And so I think a lot about how do I raise resilient kids without I don't want them to have to go through the same struggles I have to gain resiliency. So what suggestions do you have for that entrepreneur who's like, I don't want to put my kid in poverty, so to speak, or go back to where I went to, but how do we raise resilient kids without putting them in tough situations similar to what we had to grow up with?
So first of all, it is true that when you go through stuff, it is a training ground.
Yeah.
You learn how to be resourceful. You learn how to push. I feel like that was true for me. It wasn't poverty, but my
just the movement and then
rating, the moving, all of those things. So I think, first of all, you want to help develop a growth mindset with your kids. So stop praising your kids for being smart, for being talented, for being pretty and handsome. Start celebrating their effort. When they do well on something, talk about how they practiced, how they tried, how they pushed through. Don't make a big deal that it was easy to do because you're so smart.
Right.
If it was that easy and you're so smart, maybe you need a bigger challenge. Because life is not about just doing the stuff that's easy for you. Make sure they are making contributions to your household. Make them responsible for something. So, you know, this is hard when you are successful and then your kids come on. They didn't see, even if you didn't grow up in a difficult circumstance, if you've built a business.
Sure.
You know, and then you get to the successful part and they're just sitting back going, oh, yeah, this is great. Make sure your kids are responsible for things. For example, I mean, Alex is 11, but Alex mows the lawn. You know, Alex is responsible for putting dishes away. Like, Alex has a checklist. You know, don't ask me about playing whatever electronic game you want to play. if you haven't done the things you need to do for today, which include making sure your room is clean, neatly so, right? That you've done all the things that matter, your homework, et cetera, and it's done neatly. Sometimes they're going to push back on some of those things, but it really is important that you set standards, high standards that they can achieve. Don't make it so you're always moving the finish line and they can't achieve something. But also, when they're dealing with something that's hard, let them deal with it. If they're having trouble in some of their friendships, don't try to fix it. Talk it through with them. Help them learn how to be in relationship, how to work through relationship, how to set boundaries in relationships. You know, I've told my son on a couple of occasions when there were things going on, I said, Alex, you know what? People have to earn the right to your friendship. If people are not showing up as friends, you're not obligated to keep showing up as their friend. You can be kind, but you want to be able to pay attention. People are showing you who they are. Believe them. And so, and it's hard as a parent. I remember one time I told him he wasn't allowed to play with a couple people because I didn't like how they were, you know, there had been a couple things and he's told me what they said. You know, as a parent, I was like, what? And I said, you're not playing with them anymore. And one day we're driving home and like he sees me, he wants to go play. And I said, I told you, you're not playing with them anymore. He comes, he's all upset. And then I stopped myself. It was one of those moments where you feel like God says, you can't control everything. So I went in the living room. I said, you know what? I told you that because I really feel like you need to set a boundary. And if they keep saying things that hurt your feelings and are not right, then maybe you don't need to play with them. I said, but if you really feel like you want to play with them or you want to have a conversation with them about it, I said, I'm going to leave that up to you because I think you can make good decisions. And he looked kind of surprised and I went off and did stuff. And about 20 minutes later, he was still in the house. I said, what happened? And he's like, you know, I don't think I need to. And then interestingly, a day or two later, the people that were causing this, they came over, asked if he could come outside. They talked it through. They worked it out.
That's amazing.
And what that taught me was teach him,
right, and
then help him learn to make his own decisions. And if he had gone down there and kept having the same issue, maybe he'd listen a little more because he's like, Mom said, maybe I should pay attention to that. So we got to let them fail.
Yeah.
And then talk about the failure. Do not protect them from everything. How will they learn? I mean, you're not going to let them go out there and like utterly, massively something, awful happens. But I'm talking about, people are protecting their kids from, oh my gosh, they might get a C. If they earn the C, let them get it.
Sure.
And also, if you know they can do better and they're choosing not to, then let the natural consequences happen. Right? If what they get is based on them doing certain things, they don't do them, follow through on those consequences. I think all of those kinds of things help mirror what the real world will be like for them. And that's our job as parents. Like we have guardrails. Like we're not going to, let them utterly just
fall off the situation. Of the world, right? Yeah.
Right. But I think a lot of times we're protecting them from too much and help them build up a strong mental health. Right? They're gonna be anxious about some things. Talk it through. What are you afraid is gonna happen? Okay, how could you better prepare? Be the sounding board for them. I think as parents, we, at a certain point, especially as they get to be, 10, 12, and especially teenagers, we got to coach them. We're training them, but we're also coaching them, which means they go out there and they're fighting the fight, and we're advising and coaching them.
That's so good. So many good nuggets in there. The podcast family here, we call them the bold ones. The bold ones love to pray for people. As this book enters into the wilderness, how can they pray for God to move through it? What's the prayer that accompanies your thoughts with the book?
My prayer is that everyone who needs resilience, even if they don't realize it's resilience that they need, will be exposed to the content of this book and be able to apply it in the situations God needs them to apply it in. When we talk about thought awareness, That's all throughout the Bible. Take every thought captive. Right? As a man thinks, so is he. So as I'm sharing research and science, I mean, some people are like, oh, science and oh, faith. I'm like, God created all of it. We shouldn't be surprised that the research reflects what scripture says. So my prayer is that the book gets into as many hands as possible for those I'm meant to reach. And I believe there's a bigger level of who I'm meant to reach. This is number 14 in terms of books, but I feel like it is the most impactful that I've written. I really believe that everybody needs resilience education.
Yeah.
Like, it should be taught in every school. It should be taught in every workplace. One of the things we're doing with this book is actually we've created a resilience training for organizations.
Oh, wow.
Because we all understand, if you're growing a business, you need financial capital, obviously, right? You need human capital. You need the right people in the right places with the right strengths. But the piece that gets missed is psychological capital. It's a thing, right? If you're trying to change or grow and people are not psychologically in the place, you're going to have morale issues. They're going to resist change. They might even sabotage what's happening because they are just like, no, right? And so resilience is the skill that helps a business owner navigate. It is the skill that helps an organization come together with everyone moving in the same direction. It's the skill that helps a family stay together. Yeah. So as you can see, I'm pretty passionate about this. And I want to get into as many hands as possible. I want parents to understand it so they can teach this to their kids. When the kid is failing at something, and I just can't do it. I'm just not that smart. Notice what they're saying to themselves and what might be another way to explain that. Like, once you start understanding these rules of resilience, you're going to see how they apply in so many situations. And that's what I'm excited about. The rules are they're easy to remember. Yeah. And I want it to be that way, where you just apply it. Oh, I need to close my growth gap, or, oh, I need to control the controllable and accept the rest. Like, I made the rules so you can remember them, and whatever you're going through in that moment, you're like, oh, here's what I need right now.
That's good. That's so good. Okay, I have one more question for you, but before I ask it, I know the bold ones are going to want to connect with you all over the interwebs. Where is the best place to learn all things Valorie?
Okay, so my handle on all social media is at Valorie Burton, and Valorie is like Valor, Valorie, Burton. So on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Facebook, wherever, that is where I am. And then, of course, the website is ValorieBurton.com. And if you're interested in coaching, as coaching is a resilience goal, then CAPinstitute.com, CAPP Institute.com. So you can find me in all of those places.
So good. And they're all really well done websites, actually. So I highly recommend it. So, okay, last question I love to ask people. It's an advice question. I'm going to invite you to go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice, but I get to name the season of life that you're in.
Okay, fair enough. That makes it easier. At least it's not.
It does. I want to take you back to the summer of 1999.
Okay.
This massive epiphany where life for you changes forever. If you could sit down, knee to knee, and look that younger version of yourself in the eyes, hold her hand, and give her one piece of advice about the journey she's going to go on, what would you tell her?
God did indeed speak to you in that bookstore. And I knew that. I felt it. So this is his purpose. You cannot fail at what God created you to do. So don't waste a whole bunch of time second guessing when it's hard. And it's not going to come together quickly. So you're going to be going, if you stayed in PR, you'd be a VP somewhere by now, or you'd grow that PR agency and, you'd make more money. That first 10 years was, I was doing it, but I was realizing if I'd stayed in the old career, I'd maybe be at a higher level. So I would tell myself, it doesn't matter. Because if you find what God calls you to do, I finally got to that point, it took about 10 years. If that means that you're in a little studio apartment and, you don't have all the things, but you're doing what you were called to do and impacting people in a way that only you can impact them, because this is what you're passionate about, it's what you're built for. Don't worry about the other stuff. Just stay focused. God is with you. And when you get confused or don't know what to do next, remember James 1:5. If any of you lacks wisdom, ask God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given unto you. But you must believe and not doubt, because the person who doubts is thrown and tossed by the wind. Don't doubt this. You are so blessed at 26 to discover what you're here for. Run with it. So that's what I would say. That's the biggest thing. The second guessing. I never quit doing it, but I wasted a lot of time and energy questioning and thinking about what could have been, which I didn't want, because I didn't want to be in PR. But I was still thinking about it. You'd make more money. But one thing I did hear soon after that, because I was having those thoughts almost immediately, like maybe a year after that. I remember I was living in Dallas at the time. I was driving down McKinney Avenue thinking, well, if I did this, then that. And the Holy Spirit stopped me and said, you will never make more money doing anything other than what I called you to do.
Woo!
I never, ever forgot that.
That's good.
Didn't say you'll make it this year. He said, you'll never make more money doing anything other than what I called you to do. I said, okay. You're not going to tell me when, right? Like, nope.
That's not going to help me make my mortgage this month, but right.
Yeah. And it's been a great journey, and it's very fulfilling, and I feel very, very blessed to get to do something that I really, really love doing, that also helps people do what they need to do in life.
I love it. This was such a rich and generous conversation. Thank you so much for all that you have and all that you give, and just your heart and the way that you're transforming the kingdom. And just thank you for the time today. It was really fun.
Well, you're welcome. But, let me thank you, because you're really, really great at interviewing. But I shouldn't be surprised, because you're a coach. You know how to ask powerful questions. But thank you. I've very much enjoyed our conversation.
Hey, friends, welcome to the 3 and 5, 3 practical takeaways in 5 minutes or less. Number 1, cultivate a growth mindset. I love this thought. We call it an abundance mindset a lot, but it's this idea that you can encourage yourself and those around you to focus on effort and perseverance rather than just innate talent. Of course, you're talented. You're listening to this podcast. You've got talent. But what does it look like to lean into growth? What's the process of learning and overcoming challenges, which builds resilience, and it kind of exercises a whole different set of adaptability muscles. Number 2, embrace thought awareness. I love the idea that Valorie gave us about taking captive every thought and being mindful of your internal dialogue. We have to challenge negative or limiting beliefs and replace them with something that's more constructive or empowering, or just thoughts in general, to enhance your resilience. Thought awareness is actually a big part of what I talk about in the book, Wisdom in the Wound. You have to be willing to feel your feelings and then understand and ask yourself the question, are these true? All right, number 3, foster resilient relationships. You've got to build a strong support system around you, nurturing these reciprocal relationships. And I also want to encourage a diverse perspective in those relationships. I love hanging out with people that don't agree with me, not because I'm a masochist, but because I enjoy the process of being challenged by someone who just thinks a little different. When you can do this, you can strengthen your own ability to navigate life's challenges in unique ways. If you're always surrounded by yes men or yes women, then eventually you're going to be left fragile. Okay, 3 and 5. Let's go over it one more time. Number 1, cultivate a growth mindset. Number 2, embrace thought awareness. And number 3, foster resilient relationships. That's our 3 and 5. Thank you so much for making it all the way to the end of the podcast. You're now part of the end of the podcast club. You are one of the bold ones. I'm so excited about what God is doing on this platform. And if you need anything from me, I'm embarrassingly easy to find. Tony at TWMilt. I would love to hear your reflections from the episode. Shoot me an email. Give me your thoughts. I'm always curious what people are learning. As always, if you want to follow Jesus, you got to be willing to move.